You already know. Smooth this. You already know what it is. Back at this with another video to pump out to my young boys, maybe girls. But no, today I want to get on here real quick. Get on here and talk about these scriptures a little bit. I'm saying here, I guess this is kind of like a study to show thyself approved. Even though I kind of already read these chapters that I'm gonna be kind of like briefly talking about. I just kind of wanted to get on here and chop it up a little bit because I'm reading these scriptures. I'm in Ezekiel 37 right now. And this is chapter, is talking about the valley of dry bones. And that's, Ezekiel essentially went to, the Most High told him to go to the valley of the dry bones and prophesy unto the valley of the bones and essentially speak life into, the dead that was resting there. The Most High, he brought breath, he brought life into the bones that was resting there. And I'm thinking about like kind of how society and everything like that. I'm thinking about the powers that be and how Satan operate. And with all the things going on in the world, it's clear to me that what Satan wants is for those bones to essentially stay dry. He wants the valley of dry bones to stay the valley of dry bones because in the scriptures in the story, Ezekiel essentially spoke life into the bones, and then it pretty much resurrected Israel from the dead. And when I think about Israel's current state, that's essentially what it is that's essentially what we're looking at right now. Israel is currently in a dead state. You know, we are as a people, we don't have our identity. We are lost, confused, dabbling into all sorts of, foreign practices, new age spirituality. We are constantly, bringing each other down. We got tethers in the community, you know, you got tethers in the community constantly trying to bring blacks down, bring, the children of Israel down, and keep this negative stigma over us as far as our image. It's not even just the tethers doing it. Again, obviously the powers that be is doing it, but it hit closer to home that you got people that look like us who are claiming to be blacks or whatever, and yet all they can seem to do is prioritize on tearing other blacks down, tearing other people down, and keeping just a negative stigma over us. And at the end of the day, those people are just influenced by Satan himself, influenced by the powers that be that essentially want us to remain dead, want us to remain in the state we are in currently, which is like dry bones. If I was to, reading this, if I was to sit up there and think about the state of our people right now, we are dry bones. We are just laid to waste. Our former glory is so far behind us as far as us being a royal priesthood, as far as us being, the upright nation that's serving the Most High. That the world is in the hands of the wicked. So our glory days is very far behind us. And what the enemy wants is for us to continuously perpetuate these things, to perpetuate the stereotypes, perpetuate you know, the ghetto ratchet behaviors, all of these things. You got Zeus Network and Baddies. You got the Shade Room. You got World Star. Everything you can think of is all working against God's people, and it has resulted in us being in this dry bone state. So, it's dawned on me, why people like, people like myself, people like New Breed, and, people close to me like my brother, God Shaw's son, other things. People like that. It's important for people like us to be around because, and it's important even for some of y'all. I don't know what y'all do in y'all daily life, but I just hope that y'all are spreading, life, speaking life into the children of Israel the same way that Ezekiel was commanded to, essentially. That's kind of the moral of the story. Speak life into your people. Don't be that person that's don't be that person that's always talking about, oh, black people can't do this, black people can't do that. Oh, I'm so young, but I can still, like, it's so many countless times where I've simply heard people say black people can't never come together. Black people can't never do this. Black people can't never do that. Because the scriptures say life and death is in the tongue. So when you are speaking these things, you saying, oh, we can't ever do this, we can't ever do that, or you kind of doubting the potential of your fellow brothers and sisters. It's like you are creating that world for yourself. You are creating an environment where you around, like, those people have to be creating environments where they are in like a crabs in a bucket type situation, where your people is never going to be able to come together around you, because that's the type of energy you putting out. That's the type of, you know life. That's depth that you speaking out. That's the philosophies that's keeping us in a dry bone state. We need more people out there in the world that's speaking life into our people, that's speaking, you know just life, bringing the breath back, bringing the flesh back into our people, because we right now we looking toast. We looking like toast. But it's not always gonna be that way. The Lord's will is gonna be done regardless. So that's another thing. In these scriptures I've been reading, I believe it's Ezekiel 38 or 39, where the Most High brings His fury upon Gog and Magog, and he had it. Those people thought that they had it all figured out. They thought that they sat up there and was the ultimate army. They thought that they was the ultimate warriors. Can nothing mess with them on the earth. And then God stepped in and worked a miracle, and He made it rain fire and brimstone on those guys. So they learned the hard way. But the Most High is gonna always make a way. His will is gonna be done, regardless of what He got to do. He's gonna make it happen. So again, history is just gonna only repeat itself. Nothing is new under the sun. So even though we are in the valley of dry bones state right now, life is gonna come back into Israel, and the king is gonna come back, and then just as it's saying in these scriptures, we're gonna have one king, and he's gonna be the king of all kings, and that's gonna be Christ, the Messiah, and it's just gonna be up. That's just inevitable. But in the meantime, we still gotta pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. We still gotta raise each other up. We still gotta raise each other frequencies, raise each other vibrations, and speak life into one another. Speak life on our name. Speak life into our people, and call out people who are living these negative stereotypes and believe that black people are just doomed to be at the bottom, and just doomed to be essentially failures, as they would say. What's going on, Shine? But yeah, it's like we got to speak life into one another, because that's what the enemy want. The enemy want us to continue to speak death on one another, continue to believe that we won't ever amount to anything, that we just gonna always be at the bottom, and all of that. But that comes from a place of people who simply not getting into their word, because if you was in your word, you would see who the children of Israel are. You would see how things got to the point where they are now, where quote unquote black people are in a state to where they are seeming to be if you would go off in the media, where they seeming to be ignorant and just degenerate and all of that type of stuff. you will see how it got to the point where these things are happening, and it's, we are responsible for our fate and how we got to this point, yes. But at the same time, it's many, many, many forces that's working against us constantly. It's many forces that's working against us, keeping us down, trying to keep us downtrodden, and again, essentially just trying to keep us in the valley of dry bones. And once you start speaking life into your situation, you can start speaking life into other people's situation and speaking life into your people in general. Excuse me. Don't fall into the trap, y'all. Don't fall into the trap. What's up, Rich? What's up, Richie? But yeah, don't fall into the trap. That's all they want. All they want is for you to see degenerate content on social media, degenerate movies. They just want you to constantly be pumped up with all of this negative, negative, negative. So you can eventually say the negativity out loud and be like, man, black people is never gonna get it. They never gonna come together. They never gonna do this. They never gonna do that. And that's just a lie. That's a lie from the devil. You speaking that devil talk, and the scriptures say the devil is, he's a liar. He's the prince of all lies. So because we are gonna come together. God's people who are on the same path, walking the narrow, getting into their word, learning who they are. And that's why, again, it's so important to get into your word, because if you don't know who you are as a person, you don't know your identity, of course you're going to sit up there and think that this is who we is. The Bible say, raise up a child as you had them go, and they won't depart from the faith. I just was talking to somebody about this the other day who was asking, like, they asked, do you think it's necessary to essentially teach your kids about all of the evil that's going on in the world, and making them conscious of all of the things that's going on, like on the TV and all of that type of stuff? They was kind of wondering, they was kind of questioning, wouldn't it be better to just tone everything out and kind of just, if it don't apply, let it fly type deal? And that's like a going with the flow mentality. You got to understand, only dead fish go with the flow. Everybody has a choice to make a choice. If you choose not to choose, that's your choice. All of that. And if you don't raise your kids, something is going to raise your kids. That's what you got to know. If you're not bringing them up in this word, then something else is going to usher them in and influence them to do other stuff. And the same thing with all of us. Same thing with, us as adults. If you are not getting into your word, people who ain't getting into their word, who not learning who they are, they not learning who the Most High is, and you not learning who your people is, something else is gonna raise you up and then show you who your people is. That's gonna be Satan. You either gonna choose the Most High or you gonna choose the devil. If you ain't going this route, then if this ain't teaching you who your people is, then the TV is gonna teach you who your people is. The Shade Room is gonna teach you who your people is. World Star is gonna teach you who your people is. Tyler Perry gonna teach you who your people is. You feel me? So you gonna have to learn one way or another. There's no way you can just be like, okay, you can't just go with the flow. Only dead fish go with the flow. You gonna have to learn one way or another. So if you ain't learning through this lens, you gonna learn from many other different lenses. And Satan is the god of this world. He has control of everything else that's outside of this. He has influence on everything else that's outside of this. He has influence through your phone, which is a portal. He got influence through the television, which is, the TV, live vision. He has influence through all of that stuff. So you're going to have to get it one way or another. And again, it starts with peeling open that book and getting the understanding from the Most High yourself. And that's pretty much. I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to get on here and get that out. I know I've been gone for a little bit, probably about a week now, and sometimes you got to sit up there and go in the hyperbolic time chamber. Sometimes you got to get into this word, get juiced up in the spirit, and and do what it got to do, because this type of content, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to do, to do this. It takes a lot of energy. and everything like that. And when you got other stuff going on, you know, this type of stuff, you know, you can lose track of time and be like, dang, I ain't uploaded in a minute. But I'm gonna try to be more consistent. I definitely want to get on here and really prioritize focusing on the word. I really want to get on here and just focus on spreading the word right now. That's what I feel like my spirit is calling me to do. So I'm gonna just be getting back on here periodically, and you know, we just gonna be going into the scriptures, talking about things that's going on and peeling open the book. So that's pretty much it, man. Definitely more content on the way. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. More stuff is coming. Love y'all. Take care. Stay safe. I'm on y'all boys. I can't do the proper close when I'm sitting up there like this. All right, y'all.